Hi there, I'm Wendy, and in this video I'm going to show you a very basic way of casting on for knitting. So this is suitable for absolute beginners, and I'm going to take you through it very slowly and step by step, and we're going to cast on together 10 stitches. Now I'm using UK double knitting yarn, but you can use whichever weight of yarn that you prefer. If you prefer to use an Aran or a chunky yarn, that's fine. But you just need to make sure that you're using the corresponding weight of knitting needle. But just before we start, if you're new to my channel, it would be great if you subscribed, then you'll get to hear when my next videos and updates go live. And if you like this video, it would be lovely if you gave me a thumbs up as well. So let's get straight on and start learning how to cast on, and then we can get ready to knit. Now, the first thing that we want to do before we start using this method is calculate how much yarn we need for working a long tail cast on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my yarn at the tail end and my knitting needle, and I'm just going to wind it around my needle 10 times. So that's a third, fourth, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th time. And then I'm going to take that off my needle. And I know that approximately for every 10 stitches that I want to make, I need to allow this length of yarn before making my slip knot. So I'm just going to be working 10 cast on stitches today. So this is roughly the amount that I'll need, but I'll just give myself a little bit of extra as well, just to be on the safe side. So I now need to make a slip knot, and one of the easy ways to make your slip knot is to hold the tail end of your yarn in the left hand, so that's hanging down to the left hand side, and you want the yarn that's going to your ball of wool, you want that coming out to the right hand side. And then we can just hold both pieces of yarn and push them together and then let them loop over, but make sure that the left hand yarn is on the top. So the yarn that's going to the left here to our tail end, that is the upper yarn on the loop. Then we want to take that tail end and we want to just let that hang behind our loop here. And then we can take our thumb and our finger of our left hand and just pop it through that loop and grab that tail end, and then just pull the tail end that we've pulled through and pull the other ends, and we've created a flexible loop. And that's all a slip knot is. You just need to have a flexible loop to start with. So now I've got this slip knot that's a little way away from the end of my yarn, but I wanted to leave this long end because I need this to make a long tail cast on. So I'm going to let that tail end hang at the back, and the yarn that's coming to the ball of wool, I want that to the front. I want that nearer me. So then with my right hand, I'm going to pick up my knitting needle and I'm going to pop it through that slip knot and just tighten it up. And I don't want it so tight that I can't move it. I just want it comfortably on my knitting needle. So this is the way that I teach how to do a long tail cast on for the very, very first time. And what you're going to do is you're going to be making a loop that sits on the needle with the yarn that's coming to the ball of wool. And then you're going to be knitting it with the tail end yarn, with the yarn that just goes to nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my left hand out flat. I've got it palmed down and it's facing away from me. And I'm just going to turn my hand around into me. So my elbow's gone out and I've got my thumb and my fingers coming towards me. And I'm going to grab that yarn that's coming from the ball of wool. So I'm going to pick it up and then I'm going to twist my hand back to its normal position. So my fingers are pointing outwards and I've created a loop. And with that loop, you can see that the yarn is trailing over the top here. So then with that loop, I'm just going to sit that on the needle and I'm just going to snug it up a little bit. I don't want it really tight like that, and I don't want it really loose. I just want it just sitting there. And then with my right hand, I'm going to take the tail end of the yarn and I'm going to just support the stitches on my needle to stop them twisting. So I'm just going to hold them with my left hand, and with the right hand I'm going to take the yarn under the needle and over the top clockwise, and then hold the needle with my right hand, and then I can pick up that loop that I made and I can just pull that over the top of the needle, and then just pull both ends gently, and I'll have 2 stitches on my knitting needle. So you don't want to pull them too tightly because you want to be able to knit into them for your first row, but that's your first 2 stitches made. So I'm going to do that again and do it very slowly. I'm going to hold the knitting needle with my right hand. I'm going to point my fingers and thumb away from me, and then I'm going to turn my hand inwards and my elbow out. So my fingers are now coming towards me. I'm going to grab that yarn, and then I'm going to turn my hand back out into the normal position, and I'll have created a loop. That loop can then just sit on my knitting needle, and I can just snug it up a little bit so it's just comfortable. Then I can take the yarn that's trailing away to the tail end, and I take that under the needle and up clockwise and over the needle and back down again. And then that loop that I just made, that I've got sitting snugly on my needle here, I can just take that loop to the tip of the needle and just slip it over the edge, and then I can just tighten up my yarns a little bit. As I said, not too tightly. I want to be able to comfortably move them up and down my needle. But I now have 3 stitches on my knitting needle. So again, my yarn with the tail end that hangs to the back, the yarn that's coming to the ball of wool, that's at the front. So again, I'm going to take my hand so it's pointing outwards. I'm going to turn my elbow out and turn my fingers in and grab that yarn that's at the front, the yarn that's coming to the ball of wool. Turn my hand back out again, and I've got this loop. And then that loop is going to sit on my needle. And then I can just snug it up a bit so it's a bit more comfortable on my needle. Then I'm going to swap hands and hold the needle with my left hand. Take the yarn that's going away to the tail end with my right hand and take it anti-clockwise under the needle, up and over and back down to where it came from. And then I can swap hands again, and then with my left hand I can pick up that loop I put on the needle and pull it over the tip, and I've made 4 stitches. So again, I'm going to point my hand outwards with my fingers pointing away from me. I'm now going to turn my elbow out, so I turn my fingers and my thumb round, and I pick up that yarn, and then I can turn my hand back to its normal position, and I have my loop. Pop my loop on that knitting needle, snug it up a little bit, and then I'm going to hold that knitting needle with my left hand, and the yarn that's trailing away to nothing, the yarn that's to the tail end, that I'm going to take it under the needle clockwise, up and over and back down to where it came from, and then I'm going to take that loop that I made and take that loop over it and over the end of the needle, and I've now made 5 stitches. So you can see these now appearing on my knitting needle. So again, hand out in front of me, elbow out to the side, turn my hand around, grab that yarn, turn my hand back to the normal position, and you'll see I have this loop. The loop sits on the knitting needle and I snug it up. Then I take the right hand yarn, the yarn that's going to the tail end, and I take it anti-clockwise under the knitting needle, over the knitting needle and back down again. And then that loop that I just made and put on my needle, I'm going to pick that up with my left hand, and I'm going to gently take it over the end of the needle and then snug those stitches up. And I've now got 6 stitches, so I've got 4 more to do. So hand points away from me, elbow goes out, hand comes down towards me, I grab those stitches, I turn my hand away, and I've created a loop. The loop goes on the knitting needle, I then pull the yarn and just snug it up, not too tight. Leave it loose enough that I can take it over that end of the needle in a minute. Hold the knitting needle now with my left hand. Take my tail end, which is getting shorter now. Take that clockwise under the needle, up and over the needle and back down again. And then I can pick up that loop that I put on the needle and pull it over the tip of the needle and then just snug both ends. And I now have 7 stitches. So we've just got 3 more to go. Hand out in front of me, elbow out to the side, hands now pointing towards me. Grab the yarn, take my hand back so it's pointing away from me again, and I've created my loop. Pop the loop on the needle, pull the yarn just to snug it up a little bit. Swap hands again, so I'm now holding with my left hand, and with my right hand and that tail end, take the tail end clockwise under the needle, up and over the top and back down again. And then I can just take that loop that I made and popped on the needle, take it to the end of the needle and just slip it over the edge. And then just gently pull both ends and snug up, and I've got 8 stitches. So again, hand out in front of me, elbow out to the side, bring the fingers round towards me so they're pointing towards me, grab the yarn and then turn my hand away, and I've got a loop. The loop goes on my knitting needle and then I just tighten it up a little bit. And then with my right hand, I pick up that tail end and I just knit that tail end. So I'm just going to take the tail end under the needle, up and over and back down to where it came from, and then take that loop and take the loop over to the end and flip it off, and I now have 9 stitches. So our last and 10th stitch now, fingers pointing away from me, palm down, elbow out, turn those fingers round towards me, grab the yarn, take my hand back to its normal position, and I've created a loop. The loop goes on the needle and I just tighten that yarn up a little bit. Again, not too tight, especially for the first time. And then I'm going to take my tail end and I'm going to take it from right to left, under the needle, up and over and back down again to where it came from. And then I'm going to take that loop with my left hand and take it to the end of the needle and slip it over the edge. And then I can just tighten up both ends just so that they're sitting snugly on my needle, and I should be able to move my stitches up and down. So you might want to practice that a little bit, especially if your cast on is on the tighter side, but this is the most basic way of teaching you how to make a long tail cast on. And then you can build from this and learn to progress onto making other forms of cast on as you get a little bit more confident with your knitting. So I hope you found that useful, and I hope you enjoy learning to knit, and I hope that you join me again soon. So thanks very much for watching and see you soon.